We're using the Columbo tactic. We're using the question, what do you mean by that? There are 3 reasons why this is important. First, you don't want to misunderstand the person you're talking with, right? So they might be throwing out a slogan that you've heard a million times before. You know exactly what to respond to them, but they mean something completely different. Right. Or they're just getting into the subject and, they're wanting to discuss with you because they know that you're a good Christian. And so, of course, Constantine wrote the Bible and throughout all the bad stuff. Everybody knows that. Okay, well, what do you mean by that? Yeah. There are questions to unpack within there. And so they might not even be sure themselves, and you're wanting to understand where they're coming from. And that person's response might be, well, I was reading this book, or I was watching Joe Rogan last night, and that's a famous one for Joe Rogan. It always makes me just want to itch my teeth every time he talks about it, because he just needs somebody on there to correct him. It's terrible. Second, you don't want to misrepresent the person, right? So by asking this clarifying question, they're able to say, well, okay, I don't mean a fetus is not a person, but you know what I mean? Like, they can't feel pain, or, it's only later that you're able to, have brain function or whatever it might be. So it allows that person to clarify themselves and for you to understand where they're coming from. And you're not attacking the straw man. You're not saying, oh, well, here's what you mean by it, and here's me knocking it down. And they're like, well,
that's not what I meant.
I wasn't even talking about that. So to prevent that, that's not what I was even talking about. This question of what do you mean by that helps to alleviate that.
So we might want to understand or define what we mean in terms of a straw man, right? So what we're talking about there is it's a logical fallacy,
sure.
And it's whenever you are answering a question, right, that wasn't or an issue that's not the real issue, right? So a person has a particular position. They let you know their position. They give you their argument for their position, and then instead of dealing with that position, you either misunderstand it or are confused or whatever, and so you answer a different question and you attack a different issue, and so that's called attacking a straw man. It's not the real issue. It's not the real argument that the person had. We want to be able to deal with the real argument, the real issue that they're talking about, and so we need to listen to what they're saying, right, so that we can understand where they're coming from. Right. We don't want to misrepresent them.
Right. And third, you don't want to misunderstand him. That is, asking, what do you mean by that, helps the other person to be clear in his or her mind what they're talking about. So, you want to be clear what they're saying, they want to be clear, and it kind of parses that misunderstanding that you might have that happens with all conversations between people, especially, people that you might not know fully. Or even people that you do know that you want to keep friendships, but maybe you don't know as well. So that just helps.
Yeah, because oftentimes, as we mentioned, or as he has mentioned, they're just repeating a slogan. Yeah. Right? They don't even know what they mean by that.
It's just a clump of cells.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So you don't want them to.
You're just a clump of cells.
Yeah. So you don't want them to misunderstand themselves, right? What question are you really, or what issue are you really asking? Is what you have here.
Right.
So misunderstand the person. We don't want to do that. We don't want to misrepresent the person, and we don't want the person to misunderstand themselves.
Right. Maybe they have a real question, and that was just the hidden question to get you to react.
Yeah. Or there is a real question that they haven't even thought about yet, and so you want to kind of draw that out, kind of thing, right? So he tells us that we shouldn't underestimate the power of the question. What do you mean by that, right? So use it often, he says, right? So practice it. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that, right? He says use it also often. It'll keep you engaged in productive conversation while keeping the focus and the pressure on the other person and not you. Now, again, he's going to talk to us a bit about, when they ask us to defend our position. Right. But if a person makes a claim, the rules of engagement suggest that they are responsible to defend that claim and not just assume that everybody knows what they're talking about and that sort of thing. And so you make a claim, the pressure's on you to defend it.
Right. And so he says, look at what you've accomplished by just asking, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
First, you immediately engage the non-believer in an interactive way, right? It creates a dialogue. Second, you show a genuine interest in the other person's view, which is also important. You are wanting to respond to their question. You're not just wanting to preach or be heard or say what you think they're saying. You're actively engaged in that other person's view. And third, you urge him to think more carefully about what he does. And fourth, you get a free education. Hey, that might be the case. Finally, there's no pressure on you. You're in the driver's seat. By asking that question, you can kind of drill down even more about where you might be comfortable to respond to. So again, you're Lieutenant Columbo. You don't want to spook the murderer into fleeing. You want to think that they've gotten away with it. And so, well, hold on. Let me ask you a question. What do you mean by that?
Right.